Hey, it's Ron McLean. Welcome to Hockey Talk on the Rock.
With Lara and Keith.
It's interesting.
So let's back up a second.
He played absolutely out of his mind.
It made no sense to me.
And now, here are your hosts.
Alrighty, here we go. All right, we are back doing Hockey Talk on the Rock, Salt Spring Island, episode number 61. What is it today? It is the 6th of January, Thursday night, coming at you. It's Lara, I'm Keith, and as always, throwing to Lara with some rant and raving about the Canucks in their last few games.
Yeah, so again, weird positive times for the Canucks. I mean, I feel like there isn't that much you can complain about. I'll hit you up with a couple controversial things in a second here. But in general, the Canucks have been playing quite well. And when they haven't played quite well, they have been able to claw back into games and get points. So still haven't lost in regulation in over a month. I mean, they haven't played since Saturday at this point. So just because of the COVID rescheduling. But it's still been a fun time to be a Canucks fan. And they've been helped out by the fact that some other teams in the Pacific aren't doing super well right now. So they've kind of clawed their way back into playoff contention, which I think if we had said that in November, I would have laughed at you because they were just so far out of it. So right now they're about 3 points. I think they're 3 points behind. But they do have they're 2 teams away from that bottom, the last wild card spot too. So they still have work to do, but they've put themselves into the conversation, which I think, judging by how this season started, is all that we can hope for. The kind of controversial stuff, I guess, that we can talk about in terms of maybe not positives. I mean, let's just start with the obvious one, right? Which is Pettersson, who has now been placed on the COVID protocol, but he has still not looked like himself. And I mean, when we talked about Boudreau taking over, that was like our kind of hope was really him and Besser would get going, and Besser looked pretty good before going on COVID protocol himself. And Pettersson had glimpses, but he's still off. And again, I think with him this season, I mean, the only thing I can think of is potentially it's still his wrist is bugging him, or else, something has completely happened to his confidence and he can't play hockey anymore. But I mean, I was looking at his stats from the bubble playoff run, and I know you don't want to take too much away from it, but up until that point in his career, he'd been very dominant, and that playoff run, he was over a point a game. And then it seemed like the COVID season happened and something just was wrong, and he's never gotten it back. And it's very frustrating to watch. I am not in the let's trade Pettersson camp at this stage, because I think you'd be stupid if you sold low on someone with his potential. But I just think it's are we gonna see dominant Pettersson again?
Yeah, I mean, it only makes me kind of think of Besser after he hurt his back or whatever it was, and it took him quite a while to kind of regain that form. So they're young and there's still hope, I hope.
Yeah, and the comparable that everyone's throwing out there, which is obviously a high comparable, is Nathan MacKinnon, because after his rookie season that he did quite well in, he had, I think, 2 or 3 seasons where he was about 55 points a season, which, isn't amazing. It's pretty average. So there's the comparison that maybe Pettersson's going through something similar to what MacKinnon went through, but obviously they're very different style of players. So it's kind of hard to say. But it's frustrating to watch because the team is playing so well, but you just know that if Pettersson was on his game, they'd be so much better.
Yeah, for sure. Can't disagree.
Anyway, so that's the first one. The second controversial topic that's kind of cropped up in Canucks fandom is about their backup goalie, Halak. And The reason why it's controversial at all is if Halak plays 2 more games this season, the Canucks are going to owe him basically $1.5 million or 1.5 mil. That's going to go on their cap next season. And as we know, the Canucks cap situation is not great. So there's some talk over if they should try to trade Halak before he gets those 2 starts. Now, the wrinkle in that is that he has a full no trade. But I don't know, like, it's an interesting possibility, and the Canucks are in a very unique position because I think if they did want to make some moves, they have players on their team right now that they could get quite a lot back for. But they obviously have to assess where they're at and how far away they really are from competing, because I mean, this Boudreau period has been really nice, but I think everyone knows that there's still problems with the team. And yeah, anyway, I just thought I'd throw it out there. What are your thoughts on a potential Halak trade?
I mean, I think he's been really good. Like, the win-loss column wouldn't say that he's been good if you look only at that, but the games that he's lost, he's played really, really well, and the team was playing really poorly at that point.
Yeah.
I would want to see, based on how they're doing now, I would want to see him stick it out for the rest of the season. But I mean, I'm really looking forward to this big road trip that they're going to start after they play Ottawa on Saturday, because they play like the top teams in the league, and it's going to be a good evaluation run, I think, both being on the road and playing some of those top teams, just to see where they really are. And I feel like we'll kind of know what's going to happen leading off from that, depending on if they go 500 or if they do really well or if maybe they do really poorly, you know?
Yeah, and I think for sure, like, with Halak, I think the stat was that in his first, like, 5 starts, they didn't score more than 2 goals a game for him, which is like, what is Halak meant to do? Like, you're basically giving him no run support to win. And I agree with you. I think he's played very well. But I also think, I guess, that if there was a way to be creative and get an asset back, I'd be okay with it as well. And that's kind of how I feel about this Canucks team right now. But maybe it is just because we don't know really who they are. And it's been such a black and white season so far that it's hard to say. So anyway, they'll continue on, as you say, Saturday night against Ottawa, and then a bunch of good teams in a row. So,
and I mean, I think it'd be twofold for sketchy reasons to want to make that move with him, because who's going to come up and be the backup? Would it be DiPietro?
Yeah, I mean, it depends what you get back, right?
Yeah, who hasn't been playing well since he had a full year off, basically. Yeah. And then if Demko got hurt, and DiPietro was the backup, then what? Then who's coming in, right? Like, you'd be going with Archer, Seelovs, and DiPietro for, I don't know. I don't think that would go over well either.
No, you're right.
So, yeah. I wanted to quickly throw a note in there about how we both went 0 for 3 on our predictions of the World Junior finishing, because it didn't happen.
Yeah, I think technically Finland won because they had the most points.
There you go.
But, it doesn't really count. It was too bad. But it sounds like maybe they're going to try and do it in the summer, which would also be interesting, because I don't know, now that the NHL players aren't going to the Olympics, and countries are kind of releasing their long lists for both the Canadians and the Americans. They have quite a few of the players that would have played in the World Juniors on those lists. So right. I don't know if you're Owen Power and you go to the Olympics, are you going to say that's your Team Canada experience, and in the summer is going to be dedicated to training to prepare yourself for Buffalo, or if you'd want to go to another tournament kind of thing. But anyway, it was too bad about the World Juniors for sure.
Mm-hmm. Another thing I want to throw at you is, because you were talking about some teams that Vancouver has to leapfrog in the standings, and the tailspin that the Oilers find themselves in over this last 10, 15 games.
Yeah,
it's been amazing, because when you say the Canucks season's been so black and white, it's like the opposite for Edmonton. Like, they started off so well, and it's been so bad. So the only reason I really want to bring them up is because there's always talk about they got to make a move and are they going to fire the coach and Ken Holland wasn't aggressive enough to get the right goalie in the last 2 years, and now Dave Tippett's throwing the goalie under the bus, and the goalie's throwing the forwards under the bus.
Yeah.
So I haven't read it yet. So I'm going to claim originality on the idea that the Oilers should, and it might be viewed as an overpayment, but they should trade Koskinen and a first, and maybe like a third, maybe a second even, depending on what it would take, to the Rangers to get Georgiev, because I think he would be a number one goalie or pushing to be that on any other team that he wouldn't be stuck behind Shesterkin.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe it was almost a year ago already that Georgiev apparently like maybe talked about trying to look for a trade because he got passed by Shesterkin.
Yeah.
And it would be a price to get rid of Koskinen and bring him into Edmonton, but I think it's the last year of Koskinen's deal.
Yeah.
And they need to do something.
Yeah, and I mean, it would be very like fitting, kind of the similar move that Edmonton made when they took Cam Talbot out of New York, however many years ago. So it would kind of be history repeating itself. I could see that because I know everyone talks about Korpisalo. I don't think Korpisalo is that much of an upgrade of Koskinen personally, and maybe this is just me, but I think he benefited out of playing in Torts' system with a pretty good defense in Columbus, and I don't think he would have that success in Edmonton. So personally, I don't get that trade really for either side. I mean, I guess for Columbus, Koskinen, as you say, he's done at the end of this year. But anyway, I could see it. I still think that there might be a play for Allmark, and I know we talked about this last time, but I just think if Rask comes back to Boston and they've already kind of indicated the Swayman's ahead of Allmark in terms of their depth chart, I think that maybe they try to get rid of him and Edmonton could be a fit, but we'll see. Again, there's cap issues there, but it has been absolutely fascinating to watch Edmonton like completely tailspin with the arguably the two best players in the world. I mean, McDavid is the best player in the world and Draisaitl is very good. I don't know if he's the second best or whatever, but he's very good. He's very dominant. And it just goes, again, they just don't learn their lesson. It's the same thing every year. And I don't know. My question, I guess, to the Oilers would be, because everyone talks about if McDavid will want out if they miss the playoffs this year. But my other consideration would be, what if they tried moving Draisaitl, who does have a friendlier cap hit, and you could probably get a lot back to maybe surround McDavid with more pieces. But I don't know. Anyway, there's something fundamentally broken on that team, but if you look at the decisions they made in the offseason, like bringing in Cody Ceci and stuff, and even re-signing Tyson Barrie, like all of that just didn't make sense, and then not signing a goalie, as you said. So we'll see. Maybe they pull it around and they get super hot again, because if McDavid and Draisaitl are putting up like 2 points a game each, they're probably going to win. But anyway, it's an interesting team.
It's totally another interesting storyline to watch for sure. All right. What do we got next? Are we going hot takes or what?
We can go to hot takes. I think that's kind of everything news related, unless you want to talk about the trade between
the big trade. Massive trade. I mean, it's not a big trade, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
Because Nylander, when he got traded from Buffalo to Chicago, was kind of like, oh, maybe he'll fit in with those forwards. And Chicago got ripped on for it because they traded a high defensive prospect in Yoki Haru, who's turned out decent for Buffalo. And everyone was like, why did they trade him? Because Chicago needs defense.
Yep.
And Nylander hasn't worked out now in two different places. I don't know, low risk, maybe high reward for Pittsburgh, I guess.
Pittsburgh is pretty good at kind of, I don't know, like what's the right word here? they're pretty good with turning like kind of projects around. I mean, if you think about like Galchenyuk coming into Pittsburgh, and he was kind of in that same situation at that time, although he'd had more success in the NHL, and even Jared McCann, who didn't fit in Vancouver sadly, or in Florida, and then he went to Pittsburgh and he did pretty good. So I get the move for Pittsburgh because it feels like a very Pittsburgh move.
Yeah.
They've tried this before and they've had success. So yeah, and I mean the Sam Lafferty or whoever who went back has played, like he's an NHL fourth liner. So he's gonna play in the NHL, whereas Nylander could play in the NHL and it could look really good for Pittsburgh, but he could also be a career minor leaguer. So
Yeah.
I get it. I mean, I think I'd give the win to Pittsburgh only because of the potential, but you could argue that Chicago got something for him that is usable, so they should win.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it kind of feels like the Gaudette for Highmore trade, where I think at the time we probably both gave Chicago the win.
Yeah.
We got Gaudette and he had high upside.
Yeah.
But like, Vancouver got Highmore, who was a serviceable player, and he's still playing for Vancouver. Yeah. So it could very much be like that. And I mean, they're both on expiring deals. Pittsburgh gets a little more team control because Nylander's going to be an RFA and Lafferty's going to be a UFA. So
yeah,
we'll see. I'd give the win to Pittsburgh, and it'd be kind of neat to see if he was able to turn around because like he's obviously got it in his bloodlines with his brother and his dad being pretty good hockey players. So
yeah, it would be cool to see.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to do my hot takes?
Yeah, let's do it. We judged me hard last week, so let's see what you got.
Okay, so some of them are really bad, and then a few of them are going to look like, again, not a very hot take now, but I feel like at the time they were, so just consider that.
Okay, so, that's fine. I mean, I think I went for like maybe 50% I might get of mine, so
Yeah. Okay, so my first one is that Vegas is going to finish third in the Pacific. Right now they are first. However, there isn't much points separating first and third, which is currently Calgary. So I'll say it's still possible. However, I do think it's unlikely because I just think they're kind of rounding into form now, and I don't really see who's going to challenge them for like first and second.
Yeah. I'll go with still possible for you.
I'd say it's still possible, but unlikely.
Yeah.
Anyway, my second one is that McDavid isn't going to lead the league in points. And right now, he's currently not. I believe it is Draisaitl, but it's like Draisaitl, him, and Ovechkin, surprisingly, that are all around the same point mark. So, I mean, I'll say it's still possible, but again, probably going to be McDavid at the end of the day. So.
Yeah, I agree. Still possible.
This one really doesn't seem hot anymore. Jack Eichel doesn't play until after January 1st. Got one.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
So they already got one in the bucket there.
Yeah, that's nice because this next one is bad.
All right.
Okay, Pettersson is gonna get 100 points.
Woo! I'm gonna have to say that's gonna be a total failure.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely a total failure. Okay, next one I'm feeling pretty good about too. It is that Montreal is going to miss the playoffs.
Nice. I think we both agreed on that in the offseason. But
yeah,
I think there's no way they're coming back at this point.
No, not with their current roster of like ECHL players.
Yeah.
The next one is not so good though. It's that the Rangers are going to miss the playoffs, and they're currently first in their division, I believe.
I think they're even first in the league.
They might be first in the league. So yeah, I'm going to say that's probably a failure.
All right.
Next one was that Marc-Andre Fleury is going to get more wins in the season than Leonard. Right now, Leonard has 14 and Marc-Andre Fleury has 9. So it's close, but I'd say probably not.
Yeah, I would say that's more edging towards total failure than still possible.
Yeah. This one we can't really decide yet, but it's that Florida is going to win a round in the playoffs and Toronto is not.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
So
especially if they play each other.
That would be good. And then I guess we had a similar one, which I didn't realize, but my next one is that Demko is a Vezina finalist, which,
Oh yeah, I had that one too.
yeah, I think we both agreed it could happen. It's
Still
possible.
possible, for sure.
And this next one, which is the last one, is that Ottawa is still going to be in playoff contention in March. And yeah, I'm going to go with total failure on that one.
Gonna have to back you on that one.
Yeah. So those are my hot takes. I think I'm doing better than last year, which is saying something, because last year got 2 right total, I think.
And you just listed off 10 there?
Yeah.
And would we say like total failure was like 3? That's not bad.
It's not too bad. So we'll see. There's a few right that could go either way. But yeah. One for sure, which is nice.
Nice. And we'll see how the next few games for Vancouver goes. Excited to watch them after this big break on Saturday night. And they got a good return to play opponent with Ottawa. And hopefully it gets them primed for the big road trip we already talked about.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Alrighty. Well, I think we will be back probably next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, doing episode number 62 at that point.